What they were doing in Emily's time, preachers would find that the church, interest in the church would be waning a little, and they would trade pulpits and scare the hell out of the people and try to get them saved and get them to own Christ. And everybody was supposed to do it. And Emily didn't. She never went forward, never answered an altar call, hardly ever went to, and wrote a lot of letters feeling bad about that. Oh, why can't I be like my girlfriends who were all so happy and joyful that they own Jesus? But she couldn't do it. And even tell about Mount Holyoke.
Right, when she was in Mount Holyoke, she went to for a year, and Mary Lyon, who was the president of Mount Holyoke at the time, required all of her students to sign, to accept Jesus. And she put her students into 3 categories. Those who, yes, oh yes, I feel Jesus in my heart. Those who are still questioning. And then the smaller group, very small group, of which Emily was one, who said, I can't do this. I cannot do it. And I always admired her for that act.
And
her whole family, in fact, finally did.
Did she leave Mount Holyoke because of that?
I don't know that she left because of that, but she left. She didn't stay long.
She left ostensibly because her father wouldn't send her back because he was afraid she would catch cold. If you caught cold in that time, it was very serious. Many of her friends died of tuberculosis and lung disease, and a lot of her grief poems come from.
And she had a lot of illnesses throughout her life, as you know. One of her problems was her eyesight. And she went to a very preeminent ophthalmologist in Boston who required her never to read. She was not to read, she was not to write, because that was hard on her eyes. And so she went for a long time, a couple of years, I think, not reading because she was not supposed to read. Her eyes were condemned. And there is a connection between eyesight and epilepsy, which is chronicled in this book, Lives Like Loaded Guns, which really describes all of the support for the theory, it's still a theory, that she did in fact have epilepsy, as did a cousin of hers, as did a nephew of hers, and that she tried all of these means to deal with it, one of which was the eyes, the other was with a neurologist in Boston that she worked with, who gave her what was then I don't know what you call it when you mix glycerin with something else, but it was a tonic that was supposed to cure epilepsy. Of course it did not, but she took it faithfully. She tried very hard to follow his regime, but they never could speak of it. In those days, epilepsy was something you kept covered. You did not admit. If you were a member of a family that had epilepsy, you were shunned.
When Barbara Dana was here the other day, and she was speaking about, she did some of the bell banners, and then I asked her afterwards about the book and epilepsy, and she said she didn't believe it at all. She spent 10 years studying Emily Dickinson, and she was very upset with that book, and that she said that she had epilepsy. And so, I mean,
that's why it's a theory.
Yeah.
But I certainly was swayed by her evidence. And the doctors that she went to who were experts in epilepsy in Boston, the one especially.
How did her handwriting look?
I happen to have her manuscript books, which are facsimiles of her poems in her own handwriting. And it gets worse and worse, as most of ours does. But it's legible. No, she had a pretty, she starts off smaller and it gets more expensive. But what she did, which on the other side of it, if she had epilepsy, it was petit mal maybe instead of grand mal, because she, as I understand, that used to be the terms they used for big epilepsy and little epilepsy.
Grand mal.
Yeah, and but she spent years organizing her poems stationers, got some really good paper, got her poems, which were written on all sorts of things, backs of recipes and all kinds of things, and began, unbeknownst to anyone, to copy them down, like kind of like this, fold it over, and then bind those things into little packets of 30 to 41 feet. They're called packets by the scholars, packets. And she hid those in her bottom dresser drawer, and not to be discovered until after she died.
Her sister didn't know they were there.
Wow.
Her family, one of the greatest poets ever to write in English, let alone in America, was living in that house, and nobody in the house knew it, except Emily.
Do you think maybe that's why she stayed in her room all the time? Maybe she was protecting her poems. I never thought of it.
No, but epilepsy would explain some of that.
Oh,
She was afraid to go, according to Lyle, she was afraid to go out in public because she didn't know when this was going to come on her. And there were so many of her poems that describe that situation of being afraid of what was going to happen. We go to your third page. The rain is wider than the sky.
Oh, that's a great poem.
This is a fabulous poem. The rain is wider than the sky, for put them side by side, the one the other will contain with ease and you beside. The rain is deeper than the sea, for hold them blue to blue, the one the other will absorb as sponges buckets do. The brain is just the weight of God, for heft them pound for pound, and they will differ if they do, as syllable from sound. I wanted to mention that poem because last year at OLLI, the Osher Lifelong Learning, Alan Bernstein, who is a preeminent neurologist in Sonoma County, was giving a course on the brain. And he asked me to do something. So I chose a course and used this poem because the first line of this poem is the title for a new book by a Nobel laureate, not new now, 2004, by Gerald Edelman, called Wider Than the Sky, The Phenomenal Gift of Consciousness. And this Nobel laureate in science explains his theory of brain function, of how it produces consciousness, and comments on how Dickinson's insight in this poem predated the development of modern brain science. Dickinson was a student of consciousness.
That's right.
She was, and I just love the fact that she is acknowledged by scientists as having this incredible insight, which we can see in many of her poems, but this is the most obvious one in that way. And there's another of her poems, which I couldn't find, I can't remember the first line, so I couldn't look it up, where she actually predates Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. I think
I've got a concordance out in the car.
Oh, yeah.
I got one word, I can find it. In the car there's a great big red book. I was wondering if we might need it, but there's a concordance of Emily Dickinson, so that every word she got in her poetry is listed, and then where you can find it, and just like in the Bible, they have those, and Shakespeare and all the rest of it. Well, I put that poem under Love of Life.
Love of life, yeah.
Because she loved consciousness. She loved the idea of being conscious, a conscious human being, thinking, feeling, hurting, and enjoying human being. She loved that. And one of the reasons death was such a horrible thing to her was that it threatened. It's a threat to that thought, to being a conscious human being. And she hated that idea. Apart from the fact that death was taking her friends and neighbors away from her. And so I